Boom! We are live, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. Welcome to the Nolan Hawkeye Anthony YouTube channel. And I thank all of you for being here, wherever you may be. And of course, however you may be listening. Well, yesterday, the Iowa Hawkeyes absolutely put together a masterful performance in men's basketball, totally dismantling the Indiana Hoosiers. This was probably the biggest game remaining on Iowa's regular season schedule. Of course, there's only 2 games left. But even with 6 games to go, which is what I used as the barometer. By the way, if I'm looking this way, it's because I'm still looking at some of the highlights for the game. It is what I used as the barometer for Iowa's success, or what they should. I said that they should feel good if they finish 4-2. If they're able to finish 4-2 in their final 6 games, they should be very happy about how they ended the season. And so far, they are on track to do so. I think there's an argument to be made that Iowa could have finished 5-1, 6-0. With the losses to Wisconsin and trying to remember who else they lost to. But they were very, very winnable games, all of them. Iowa they hadn't figured out how to get it done on the road. And let's see here. Let's see who it was. Wisconsin and Northwestern. They just hadn't figured out how to get it done on the road. These would be the final 6 games that I'm talking about. Ohio State, Northwestern, Wisconsin, Michigan State, Indiana, and Nebraska. So let's talk about the actual game, shall we? As I said, huge game with tons of implications. This was, if Iowa was able to get this done, this was going to go down as a quad 1 victory. And it's actually it's Iowa. Part of the reason that they have not been able to climb as high as one would think lately in the net, or specifically the net, is because, and certain bracketologies, is because they, about a month ago, 3 weeks to a month ago, Iowa had about 7 quad 1 victories. And at the time I said, as long as this stands and all of these teams remain quad 1 victories, Iowa will have a very, very strong tournament resume with 7 quad 1 victories. Now, of course, unfortunately, that now, before the game against Indiana, went down to 4 quad 1 victories. So I'm going to pull up Iowa's net team sheet. And so that had drastically impacted their NCAA tournament resume. They have jumped all the way up to 33 with the victory over Indiana. Before last night's game, I believe they were 43rd in the net. I think they were 43rd or 44th in the net before last night's game occurred. Jumped all the way up to 33. Let's take a look at how many quad 1 victories they have. They have the 19th toughest strength of schedule, which is definitely going to help them. As I thought, last night's game would make it 5 quad 1 victories. Now, before the NCAA tournament begins, this and before the committee comes up with the tournament resume, this is subject to change. I mean, Iowa, by the time the committee is coming up with their resume, could end up having 7 or 8 quad 1 victories just by way of teams moving from quad 2 to quad 1, which Iowa has beaten. I think Michigan State is one of those teams. Rutgers might be one of those teams. The thing that's kind of the second thing that's kind of hurting Iowa and their quad 1 situation is there's much more leeway to get a quad one victory when you are on the road. And most of Iowa's wins are either neutral, or their top wins are either neutral or at home. And when you're at home, it's a much smaller. I mean, in order for it to be a quad one victory at home, you have to, the team has to be ranked 1 to 15. Whereas when it's on the road, it's 1 to 40. So that's a huge difference. So let's take a look here. Now, Iowa's 8 quad 2 victories right now as it stands is great. It's still solid. And their 5 quad 1 victories as it stands right now is still solid, in my opinion, because to me, that shows that Iowa has a winning record against quad 1 and quad 2 teams, which are primarily NCAA tournament teams. That says a lot. What happened against Indiana? Well, for the Hawkeyes, Iowa came out very strong in this game. Chris Murray went at it right from the get-go. And I want to say around the mid-mark of the first half, Iowa offensively and defensively found what they needed to get this W. Defensively, they started doubling Trace Jackson Davis, triple teaming Trace Jackson Davis, which in turn required Indiana's others of the game to make shots, which they did not. They struggled to do all night. And, Trace Jackson Davis still ended up having, I think, 26 points, but it made it far more difficult for him all night long. So, and then offensively, Iowa found this just gem of an offensive play with the back cuts, the Spain play, the Spain cut, and the back cuts, where they would get it to Rebraca, McCaffrey, or Murray in the high post because they're all solid passers for their size. And Tony Perkins, specifically Tony Perkins, and some of the other guys too, would back cut and just be open one-on-one all day long. And this totally opened the game up for the Hawkeyes. I mean, the back cut was open all game long from that point onward. So that's what changed the game. It's so crazy seeing Connor McCaffrey play 31 minutes, have 0 points, 5 rebounds, and 3 assists. I really did think at one point in time that he could become, a guy who averaged between 7 and 10 points a game. But I do think in the end, because there's only so many shots to go around, that in the end, the only shots Connor McCaffrey that he's really going to take are 2 shots, either in the post, backing down somebody, or wide open threes. Other than that, he is going to do his damnedest to play good defense, facilitate, and rebound. And he really is an integral part of this team just because the sky is the limit when you have a guy who could be something, but instead, because he knows that doing something else will raise the heights, the possibilities of a certain team, it just makes it so much better. And he is totally capable and willing to do so. The biggest change for Iowa in the past 6 games, and I would say just of late in general, you could go back the last 10 games since Iowa started to get it together in the Big Ten, has been Peyton Sandfort and Tony Perkins. Their emergence has really helped the Iowa Hawkeyes. You look at Peyton Sandfort, how the fact that he can get 16 points in only 22 minutes is just a very, very great skill to have, especially for Fran McCaffrey. And Tony Perkins, he's a pretty efficient player too. he doesn't really take bad shots. He gets into the lane. He puts pressure on defenses. He's all over the place. He gets rebounds. I mean, if you look at his stat line, you could argue that he was the player of the game with 10 rebounds, 8 assists, and 23 points. I think Tony Perkins is gearing up to be Iowa's top player going into next year. And I think it's even more possible that he becomes an NBA player because he does have the athleticism and he does have the size. I mean, he's 6'4", which is good guard size in the NBA. It's kind of a tweener size between a point guard and a shooting guard. His 3-point shot has improved immensely. Like I said, he puts phenomenal pressure on the defense. Last but not least, my 2 cents on Iowa's NCAA tournament resume. I would say that they are right now a solid 7 seed. And I think they can get as high as a 6 seed. I think anything past that is highly, highly unlikely. A 6 seed is definitely within reach for the Iowa Hawkeyes. All right. Last thing I want to talk about here, and perhaps I should just do this in a separate video, but I want to put both of these things together, is the lawsuit against the Iowa Hawkeye football team. Now, I need to start off by saying, when I remember exactly when all of this was going on, this is right when this was probably a year into me beginning to talk about the Iowa Hawkeyes and be interested in doing that. At the time, for 247 Hawkeye, which I still have as a website, 247hawkeye.com. By the way, if you're not subscribed, be sure to hit that subscribe button. I want to get to 2,000 subs before the football season starts. It was right after, or a couple of months after I had worked with Cavante Martin Manley when we did a little Facebook show together. And this was all anybody was talking about, because there were definitely other events that were happening around the country that led people to have a heightened sense of reaction to this. And, I remember talking to the other 2 writers, Paul and Dean, and we all had our different worldviews. I would say me and Paul, we all had related worldviews in one way or another. Dean is a Christian. I'm a Christian. I would say well, anyways, so I don't want to get too far into that. But the one thing we talked about, and that I felt it was very important to put across, is the need to think about this in a logical manner. Let's really talk about this. Let's look at all the available evidence and data. And let's maintain, and this is the biggest point, let's maintain the alleged aspect and the innocent until proven guilty aspect. Because for me, that's very important. And we took a lot of heat. I think, quite frankly, we were one of the only places that were transparent and gave the fullness and, quite frankly, the most accurate picture of what was going on. I really still to this day believe that. And I feel that way even more so with what we have just seen here with discrimination lawsuits dismissed against Iowa football coaches. Okay. We took a lot of heat, specifically myself. And, from day one, the main things that I said, and I might be forgetting one or 2 things, but the biggest things I said is just Iowa Hawkeye fans. I said, number one, think about all of the young men that Kirk Ferentz has assisted in his tenure as a football coach. You look at Kirk Ferentz, he's a soft-spoken man. He seems to be a fairly decent man, straightforward man, not in like a dickish way. Like he is a not, mostly, he's, like I said, he has a soft way about him, and he's helped so many young men, white, black, otherwise. And that was number one. And the second thing is, I would always say, I play Division I water polo, and I would raise the point that when you are playing at that high of a level, 9 times out of 10, okay, there may be that one extreme example, but 9 times out of 10, you as a coach simply do not have the room, because the expectations and the pressure is so high. You do not have the room to have any sort of prejudice. In other words, it's a meritocracy, and you only have the room to play the best people that should be playing, and making sure that your team is the best team that you can have them become. Okay. Which would, in my eyes, be antithetical to this whole thing. And then the third thing is, when the whole thing went down, at the time, over half of the Iowa coaching staff was African American. Okay. And it just, and it's still that way. I would say even over half now is African American for the Iowa coaching staff. So those were the main points. And the fourth point that I would bring up is that Iowa recruiting has never been better. Iowa had its highest recruiting class when all of this was going on, and a year after, and if you better believe that if there was any truth to this, that these parents and these players would find out and weed it out and not decide to commit to the Iowa Hawkeyes. Now, there were some recruits who, just by way of their worldview and them being in support of whatever they felt they were in support of, decided that they didn't want to be a part of the Iowa football team. But it was never necessarily because there was any legitimate evidence there. It was because it was more of them trying to make a statement that they did not want to be associated with whatever alleged situation was going on. But by and large, Iowa's recruiting had never been better. Okay. The Keegan Johnson class was ranked 23rd in the country. The class before that was top 30. And Iowa's recruiting continues to be very solid. Okay. I'm just going to pull that up real quick. I don't know exactly when this started. I think it would have started around 2012. So I'm going to wrap it up with this. And then we'll be done here. Bottom line is, it looks like Kirk Ferentz, Seth Wallace, and Coach Doyle are no longer, remember Coach Doyle? Are no longer involved in this case. And I think the Coach Doyle one is a very big one, because, man, that guy, I think there are some that would argue that guy is deserved millions, or 2021. Sorry, guys, not 2011, 2021. That guy is deserved millions for having to go through what he has gone through. And he has effectively become unhireable because of what happened. And in the end, it looks like he's not even going to be like hit with anything. So there's certainly those, and then there's certainly those who still, regardless of what evidence comes forth, will think that Coach Doyle is a massive racist and, has no place in sports. So 27th ranked class, 2021, 2020, it was 35. Let's just go back one more year, 2019, 46. But the recruiting ranking was 41. And let's go to 2022, 39. with the high school recruiting ranking being 30. So anyways, guys, that's going to be it. I feel that we did a great job, and I'm so happy that we stood our ground, because we did take a lot of heat. Let me tell you, a lot of heat. And I remember how volatile it was. And it's just sad to me how poor of a job the mainstream Iowa media did and how poor of a job the national media did. Because I guarantee you won't see a retraction in any of those articles that totally have altered some people's opinions of Kirk Ferentz, Iowa football, Coach Doyle forever. Okay. You will not see a retraction of that. I guarantee it. And, a couple of years later, here we are. It has died down immensely. And, there's one more thing. And I've said this many, many times and this is anecdotal. Okay. So take it for what it's worth. If you think I'm an honest guy, I think you'll trust that this is true. When I had my connection with Cavante Martin-Manley, who was one of the people attached to this lawsuit against the Iowa Hawkeye football staff, not once did I ever hear any negative or something as serious as the allegations that were put forth in this lawsuit from him. Not once did I hear anything about that. And multiple times I did ask some, behind the scenes questions that, there's no cameras here, yada, yada. Like what happens here is, do players get paid? Those types of questions. Not one thing was said that was negative about the Iowa Hawkeye football team. In fact, if you look back at Cavante Martin-Manley specifically, right after he graduated from Iowa, he, for a couple of years after, returned to Iowa and seemed very happy. If you did not have a good time at Iowa, you would not have returned to the university like Cavante Martin-Manley did. Anyways, all right, guys, that's where I'm going to leave it. Be sure to like, comment, share, subscribe. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section. Iowa basketball, what do you guys think about the lawsuit? And last but not least, DBAP, don't be a pussy without facts or feelings, because your feelings just don't matter. Love you guys. See you guys next time. Go Hawks. Bye-bye.